Jesus, the Fern life cycle is sure confusing with the whole alternation of generations and sporified and gametophyte stages.
Never fear, BRADMAN's here.
Aren't you a superhero? Gotta save the day somewhere.
Why, yes, I am a superhero. However, nothing's more important than a college education.
Good point.
Anyways, you say you're having problems with the life cycle of ferns and the alternation of generations.
I don't think I'll ever understand it.
Pish posh, with my instructions of the fern life cycle and the alternation of generations, the fern life cycle will be as easy as brushing your teeth.
Oh, can you teach me how to brush my teeth too?
Anyways, back to the ferns.
Right.
To the whiteboard! So let's start with how this alternation of generation thing works. Okay, let's start with the multicellular haploid organism, or the gametophyte. The gametophyte undergoes mitosis to produce haploid gametes. These haploid gametes then fuse in a process known as fertilization to form a zygote. This zygote then develops into a diploid sporophyte by undergoing mitosis. This forms a multicellular diploid organism, or sporophyte, which means there are 2 copies of each chromosome now. That multicellular diploid organism, or sporophyte, produces haploid spores by undergoing meiosis. Then, after that, the spores germinate and divide to form the haploid gametophyte, which then brings us back to the top of the circle, which is the multicellular haploid organism, and the cycle just repeats itself. Now, let me explain how this applies to fern reproduction. We'll start with the mature gametophyte stage. The mature gametophyte contains the male antheridium, as seen here, and the female archegonium, as seen here. These are both reproductive parts. The male reproductive part, as said, the antheridium, produces sperm. The female reproductive part, the archegonium, produces the egg. Note that a single gametophyte does not necessarily have the mature female and male parts at the same time. This is to avoid self-fertilization. You do know what self-fertilization is, right? Okay, self-fertilization in this case is where a plant fertilizes itself. So it would be like the sperm from this fern gametophyte fertilizing the egg produced on the same gametophyte.
Got it.
Anyways, the antheridium releases the sperm, which swim towards another fern's archegonium using flagella. This process fertilizes the egg. Note that fern reproduction can only occur in water because the sperm have to swim through water. Fertilization occurs, resulting in a zygote. This zygote develops into a new sporophyte embryo. The young sporophyte sprouts a root and can therefore grow independently of the gametophyte. Notice that the sporophyte sprouts up from the gametophyte, as seen here. See, here's the gametophyte, and here is the sporophyte growing up from the gametophyte. The mature sporophyte, as seen here, has a frond and roots. Now, if we zoom in to a closer picture of the back of this frond, you see these little dots. These dots are called sori, or singular sorus. These sori, or a singular sorus, contain clusters of sporangia. The clusters of sporangia, which make up
a sorus.
Yes, a cluster of sporangia do make up a sorus. Anyways, these sporangium, each sporangium, contains spore mother cells. These spore mother cells undergo meiosis to produce haploid spores. Spores are seen here. These spores germinate, giving rise to new gametophytes, as seen here, and here as you see it maturing. And then the gametophytes mature to gametophytes with rhizoids, and going back to the mature gametophyte.
That starts the life cycle all over again.
You're right. So just to make sure you've got it, let's summarize it once more.
First note that in this picture, everything in blue is haploid, meaning that there is only one copy of each chromosome, and everything in red is diploid, which means that there are 2 copies of each chromosome. Okay, so let's start out with the mature gametophyte again. The mature gametophyte has both archegonium, the female reproductive part, which produces the egg, and antheridium, the male reproductive part, which produces sperm. The sperm swim in water to the archegonium to fuse with the egg in a process called fertilization. This produces a zygote. This zygote grows into a new sporophyte. This new sporophyte sprouts out of the gametophyte and grows roots. This sporophyte grows to become a mature sporophyte. This mature sporophyte has leaves called fronds, which have sori on the back of them. These sori are made up of sporangium that undergo meiosis to produce haploid spores. These spores germinate, producing young gametophytes, which eventually grow to become mature gametophytes, starting the cycle all over again. Here is what the actual spores look like under a microscope. Here is a fern gametophyte which has been dyed, where you can clearly see the archegonium and antheridia as they have been zoomed in upon. This is a picture of a mature gametophyte under a microscope. Here is a slow progression of a fern sporophyte growing and maturing. In this picture, you can see that the ferns have grown real roots. Here is what the sporophyte looks like when it begins to grow out of the gametophyte. Here is what a mature sporophyte looks like. In this mature sporophyte, you can see many fronds. In this zoomed-in picture of the back of a frond, you can see sori. Each sorus is covered by a flap called the indusium.
That is how the fern life cycle and alternation of generation thing works.
Gee, BRADMAN, you were right. The fern life cycle and alternation of generation is sure easy to grasp. Now how about the whole brushing of my teeth thing?
What is it, Chief? The colony of polar bears in the Arctic drowning? I'm on my way.
What about the whole brushing my teeth thing?
Another day!
Our whole universe was in a hot, dense state that nearly 14 billion years ago expansion started. Wait, the earth began to cool, the autotrophs began to drool, Neanderthals developed tools, we built a wall. We built the pyramids. Math, science, history, unraveling the mystery that all started with a big bang.